So this presentation is going to be a follow-up to the Occulture Podcast I did in late April, but was released on May 23rd. It's not necessary to have heard the podcast to really get anything out of this, but it certainly will be helpful. I'm going to start with a little bit of a recap. In the podcast, I talked about a bunch of things, but I did speak of an upcoming trip at the time, which I was taking to Ashland, Oregon, and I got into some of the syncromystic aspects of Ashland. And within that, there was a strong connection to thoroughbred horses. And at the time, I wasn't really certain why, but all of the signs and all of the clues were pointing to that. And so I'll just give a quick recap. Ashland, Oregon was named by the founder, Abel Hellman, for his original home, which was Ashland County, Ohio. And if you dig a little deeper, you see that Ashland County, Ohio was named for the home of Senator Henry Clay, who lived in Kentucky. And Ashland Manor, as I believe it was known, it was an estate, and not only did he live there, but it was also a farm for thoroughbred horses. And so immediately I knew that there was a connection with Ashland, Oregon to thoroughbreds, and it went a little bit deeper because if you search on thoroughbreds, you see that the first thoroughbred that came to America was named Bully Rock. And Bully Rock is also the name of a golf course, a championship golf course, or a golf course which is in such high regard that it can host professional championship level tournaments, is located in Havre Grace, Maryland. And Havre Grace, Maryland is at the mouth of the Susquehanna River, where it transitions to the Chesapeake Bay. And if you're familiar with the Susquehanna Mystery, you know this is a very significant location because right here at Aberdeen Proving Grounds is the home of the first computer. This is where computer technology or the computer technology industry began. This is the home of ENIAC. And you could go and zoom in a little bit on Havre Grace. That's what we have here, and we see this is where Bully Rock is. It's 2 miles from this exact location. I find this an interesting name, Vulcan Materials Company, but that's another topic. But it goes even deeper than just that. We can see that Ashland's founder's name was Abel Hellman, and I spoke a little bit about how Abel Hellman is a syncromystic nod to Cain and Abel, where Hellman or man of hell would refer to Cain, and Abel is obviously Abel. And we see that the owner of the original land which Bully Rock was built upon was owned by none other than a gentleman whose last name is Abel. So there's all of this flags and clues which are like, okay, there's something going on with thoroughbreds, but I didn't know what it was. So I had that conversation with Ryan at Occulture at the end of April, and then I went to Ashland on I think it was May 11th, and I was going there because I was to present the Susquehanna Mystery. And the trip was fantastic, and probably the best part for me was the hospitality which I experienced. Right here we could see the 2 people who really made it happen. Asa, my good friend who used to live on the East Coast and is very connected to the Susquehanna River. He now lives in Ashland, and he met up with Jessica here, and they planned the whole thing, and it was just fantastic, the experience which I had. And what they had arranged were 3 events. And so there was an interview I had on a local radio station. I presented at a local coffee shop, and then there was a workshop, which was kind of like the main purpose of the trip out there. So I want to begin with the night of the coffee shop talk. That was at 7:30 that night. And it just so happened that 7 o'clock that night, right by Jessica's house where I was staying, was a fundraiser for a woman by the name of Agnes Baker Pilgrim, or as she is better known as, is Grandma Aggie. And she is the oldest member of the Tacoma people. I guess that's where Tacoma gets its name. She's the granddaughter of a chief, and she is also the head of, the elected chairperson of the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers. And this immediately caught my attention, because if you're familiar with the information of the Susquehanna Mystery, you know that there's a strong correlation to the concept of the goddess. And when I see happening at the same time in the same place that probably the most living example of what, at least to me, what goddess energy represents, which would be the grandmother of grandmothers, is not only speaking, but there's a fundraiser at the same time. I'm introducing this information in person for the first time on the West Coast. You know, it was meaningful. So I went, and I prior to my own talk, I went and sat in the space and made eye contact, and just wanted to connect on that level, whatever that may be. So the next day was when the main workshop occurred, and that occurred at this building right here. It's the home of Tale of the Sun Chiropractic. So it has a very built into it, or filled in the space, is a healing and an energetic type of atmosphere. And the building itself is octagonal. It has 8 sides, and you can see that the roof has a tiered peak. And this is what it looks like on the inside. There's the 8 sides, and there's windows, there's light coming in. And when I set up to give that presentation, I purposefully aligned myself directly underneath this center point. And at least in my mind, I'm thinking that I am transmitting whatever I'm talking about. You know, it's a transmission which is going out through this peak and spread out through the ethers. And even more specifically, I'm thinking about making an energetic connection to where I live, and which is the epicenter of the Susquehanna Mystery, which is the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. And you can see here the date which that workshop was given was May 18th. And here you can see Tale of the Sun, and it was in Ashland, Oregon. So unbeknownst to me at the time, on this exact same day, on May 18th, was the running of the Preakness Stakes, the 144th running of, for that matter. So the Preakness Stakes, if you're unfamiliar, is one of 3 horse races that make up the Triple Crown, the most prestigious of all thoroughbred horse races that is held in the United States. The other 2 are the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes. And the Preakness is held in Baltimore, Maryland. And so that's interesting, because Baltimore is off of the Chesapeake Bay, which is the Susquehanna River. It's in the same sort of geographical location. My family is from Baltimore. I grew up outside of Baltimore. Asa, who you saw earlier, is from Baltimore. And then after the actual workshop, me and Asa met up with 2 other people who were in Ashland at the same time, who are also from Baltimore. So I'm seeing all of this like synchronicity. We're seeing Baltimore, we're seeing thoroughbred, we're seeing time and space, we're seeing 144. 144 is a very significant number. I go into that in some of the Susquehanna Mystery information. But even besides that, This Preakness race was very unusual, and what made it unusual was that one of the horses threw its jockey off its back and then continued the race without a rider. And though that horse came in last, and at some point I believe the horse was even in contention to win, but even though it came in last, it was the story of the race. And so there's something unusual about this event. All this stuff is kind of like lining up. And if you look at the name of the horse, it's Bode Express. It's a blending of two words, Bode and Express. So Bode means an omen, a sign. And Express means a fast one. So now we've got one other level. This is, for better or for worse, this is how I navigate my own life and my own realities. I'm like, all right, I'm looking for a sign right here. There's so many. The synchronicities were so rich and deep that I'm looking for something, and I'm taking this with a high degree of seriousness. So let's go back to the location I was mentioning before, the Susquehanna River at the 40th parallel. And so right here we see the Susquehanna River, and right here is the exact 40th parallel. You can see it says Washington Borough right there, and Washington Borough, and this is where we have the marker for where the exact 40th parallel crosses. And right here in the town of Marietta, where this 90-degree turn occurs, is where I find myself living. So you could also see there's this road that goes around Marietta and then hugs the eastern bank of the Susquehanna, and it is 441, or the reverse of 144. So the day after the Preakness race on May 19th, so the 18th was when the presentation occurred and when the Preakness occurred, Lancaster County, which is where Marietta is, had some tornadoes. And this happens. Lancaster County has tornadoes every now and then, but it's certainly not in Tornado Alley. But even more interesting, someone sent me this link from a local news station, which is of rotating clouds over Marietta. So exactly in the location where I live. In fact, if you look at this corner right here, I can say with pretty high confidence that's the house next to where I live. I can recognize by the yellow brick. There was another image of it where you could see that brick. But anyway, so it's very, very personal, and it is exactly in the location where I was intending to make this energetic link. And there were indications of, look for an omen, look for a sign. And historically speaking, when people would look for signs, they would look into the heavens, whether that's an eclipse, whether that would be a comet, whether that would be anything unusual in the sky. So we see that happening here. We could even go one step further. This here is Tail of the Sun, their corporate logo, and you can see that there is a stylized version of a yin-yang. We have separated the two pieces of it, and there's this S which goes in the middle. And then if you look at this screenshot taken from that video I just showed you, and if you look closely right here, we can even see the exact same shape. So this doesn't really go any deeper than that, other than the fact that, there seems to be some degree of confirmation. Time will tell whatever that may mean. I'm not certain, because that's part of the Susquehanna Mystery, is trying to have a better understanding of this environment which we all find ourselves living in. So with that said, thank you for listening, and If you have any comments or insights, feel free to post them. Thank you.